Imagine walking into a store today. You pick something you want, you take out your phone, tap a screen, and a few seconds later, you have paid. No coins, no paper. Sometimes not even physical money, just a number changing on a screen. It feels completely normal. But there was a time when the idea of money would have been almost impossible to understand. There were no bank accounts, no credit cards, no ATMs, and certainly no smartphones. So, how did humans go from trading animals and sacks of grain to transferring millions of dollars with a single tap? And perhaps the strangest question is, who invented money in the first place? Was there one ancient human who simply had the idea, let's use coins? Not exactly. Money wasn't invented in one moment. It evolved, slowly, over thousands of years. And it began with a very simple problem. You have something someone else wants. They have something you want. So you trade. Simple. This is called barter. And for small communities, it can work surprisingly well. But then the problems begin. Imagine you want a new spear. The person who makes spears doesn't want fish. They want animal skins. So you need to find someone who has animal skins and wants fish, and then find the spear maker who wants the skins. Suddenly, a simple trade has become a complicated puzzle, and there was an even bigger problem. What if the spear maker already has enough skins? You can't exactly say, well, just take these anyway. The trade only works if both sides want what the other person has. Economists call this the double coincidence of wants. Ancient humans didn't use that complicated phrase, but they experienced the problem constantly. And this is where something remarkable happened. Humans began looking for things that almost everyone would accept. Something valuable, portable, durable, and easy to exchange. In different parts of the ancient world, different objects started filling this role. Shells, beads, animal skins, salt, grain, livestock, even pieces of metal. These objects weren't necessarily useful by themselves. Their real power came from something else. People believed other people would accept them. And that is one of the most important ideas behind money. Money works because people trust that other people will accept it. Thousands of years ago, that trust might have been placed in shells. Later, it was increasingly placed in metal. Metal had several advantages. It was durable, it didn't rot, it could be divided, it could be carried, and unlike food, it didn't spoil. Imagine trying to carry 20 cows across a desert to pay for something. Not very practical. Now imagine carrying a handful of metal pieces. Much easier. But there was another problem. If anyone could simply grab a piece of metal, how would you know how valuable it was? One person might say it's worth 10 fish. Another might say 5. Another might say 20. Humans needed something more reliable. They needed standardized value. And eventually, something extraordinary appeared. Coins. Around the ancient Mediterranean and Near East, governments began producing standardized pieces of metal with official markings. These markings mattered. They told people, this piece contains a specific amount of valuable metal, and more importantly, others will recognize it. Now trade became much easier. You didn't have to weigh a piece of metal every time you bought something. You could simply count the coins. Money had become standardized. But coins created another transformation. For the first time, you didn't necessarily need something useful to trade. You could sell your goods for money and keep the money, then spend it later. That sounds obvious to us, but it was revolutionary. Before this, your wealth might literally be sitting in your fields, your animals, your grain, your tools, your stored food. Now, you could store wealth in a much smaller form. A handful of coins could represent an enormous amount of economic value. And this changed society. People could specialize. One person could become a full-time blacksmith. Another could become a farmer. Another could become a merchant. They didn't need to produce everything they needed themselves. They could sell what they were good at, receive money, and buy everything else. The economy became more interconnected. But ancient money still looked very different from ours. There were no plastic cards, no digital wallets, And for much of history, money was physical. You could touch it, carry it, hide it, steal it, lose it. And governments eventually realized something important. If money was going to control an economy, they wanted control over the money. Kings and governments began regulating coins. They controlled their production. They determined their weight. They stamped their symbols onto them. Money became connected to political power. A coin wasn't just metal anymore, it represented authority. But then, another strange idea appeared. What if you didn't need to carry the money at all? Imagine you deposit your valuable coins with a trusted merchant. The merchant gives you a written note confirming that the coins belong to you. Now you travel somewhere else. Instead of carrying heavy metal, you carry the note. The person you're buying from accepts it because they trust that the merchant will honor it. Congratulations, you've just taken another step toward modern money. Paper money. The exact history was more complicated than this, but the basic idea is incredibly powerful. The piece of paper doesn't need to be valuable itself. It represents value. And once again, money is built on trust. This is where modern money starts looking surprisingly strange. Take a banknote from your wallet. The paper itself is almost worthless. You couldn't realistically buy a meal with the physical paper as a material. Its value comes from the system behind it. The government recognizes it. Businesses accept it. Banks accept it. People trust that others will accept it tomorrow. And that trust gives the paper value. But modern money has gone even further. Today, most money isn't physical. It's numbers stored inside financial systems. When you receive a salary, your employer doesn't usually hand you a suitcase full of cash. A number appears in your bank account. When you pay for something with a card, no physical money necessarily moves from your hand to the store. Numbers change. Your account goes down. The seller's account goes up. And somehow, we all agree that the transaction was real. This would probably seem like magic to someone living thousands of years ago. Imagine bringing an ancient farmer into a modern supermarket. They watch you choose food. You hold a small plastic card against a machine. Beep, done. The farmer might look at you, then at the machine, then at the food. Where did the money go? There is nothing in your hand. Nothing in the store changed physically. Yet everyone agrees the transaction happened. That's how far money has evolved. From physical objects to metal coins to paper to invisible numbers. But the basic idea hasn't changed. Money is still a tool for solving the same ancient problem. How do we exchange value efficiently? And there is something even more fascinating. Money doesn't only make buying things easier. It changes how humans think about value itself. Imagine you are an ancient farmer. You have 10 sacks of grain. How wealthy are you? It's difficult to know. How does your grain compare to a goat, or a house, or a boat, or someone's labor? Once money becomes common, everything can be expressed using the same unit. A house can cost a certain amount. A meal can cost another amount. A day's work can have a price. Suddenly, millions of different things become comparable. Money becomes a universal language of value. But this creates a strange side effect. We can start confusing price with value. Something expensive isn't necessarily important. Something cheap isn't necessarily worthless. A child's drawing may have almost no market value, but enormous emotional value. A glass of clean water might be nearly free in one city and incredibly valuable during a drought. Money measures some kinds of value very well, but it can't measure everything. And ancient humans discovered another important problem. Money itself can lose value. Imagine a kingdom produces huge amounts of coins. If the amount of money grows much faster than the amount of goods available, prices can rise. The same amount of money buys less. The problem we call inflation isn't new. Humans have struggled with it for thousands of years. Ancient rulers sometimes reduced the amount of precious metal in their coins. The coins still looked similar, but its actual value had changed. People eventually noticed, and once trust disappeared, the money became much less useful. This brings us back to the most important ingredient of all: trust. Money works because people believe it will work. A coin works because people trust its value. A banknote works because people trust the financial system behind it. A bank balance works because people trust the bank. And digital payments work because millions of people trust the systems processing them. Without trust, money becomes just numbers, or pieces of metal, or pieces of paper, nothing more. And perhaps that is the biggest difference between ancient money and modern money. Ancient humans mostly carried their wealth with them. Today, we often carry almost none of it physically. Your entire savings could exist as information inside a computer system. You could travel across the world without carrying a single coin. You could buy a house without physically exchanging anything. And yet, the transaction can be completed in seconds. The ancient human who traded fish for fruit would probably recognize the basic idea. You have something, I have something. We agree to exchange value. But almost everything surrounding that exchange has changed. The fish became coins. The coins became paper. The paper became bank balances. And now, the bank balance can become a number on your phone. Money didn't disappear. It became invisible. And perhaps the strangest part is, humans may not be finished changing it. Cryptocurrencies, digital currencies, instant global payments. New financial technologies are creating new ways to represent and transfer value. Thousands of years ago, humans asked, what can everyone agree is valuable? Today, we're asking a similar question in a completely different world. What can we trust enough to call money? The objects have changed, the technology has changed, the speed has changed, but the fundamental problem remains exactly the same. Humans need a way to exchange value across time, across distance, and between people who may never meet. Money is not just coins. It's not paper. It's not a bank account. It's an agreement. An agreement shared by millions of people that something can represent value and be exchanged for something else. Ancient humans didn't wake up one morning and invent modern money. They solved one small problem at a time. Barter created a problem. Objects became a solution. Metal improved the system. Coins standardized it. Paper made it easier to carry. Banks made it easier to store. Computers made it digital. And smartphones made it almost invisible. So the next time you tap your phone to pay for something, remember, you're participating in an idea that is thousands of years old. The technology in your hand is ancient in concept, but futuristic in execution. Because money was never really about coins. It was about trust. And as long as humans continue to trade, that idea probably isn't going anywhere.